Hey everybody, I just wanted to let you know I just finished recording the next episode of the Fee-Based Financial Planning Mastery podcast, and this one is a meaty one. It's part 3 of a 3-part series on really taking your business to the next level. This one specifically talks about scalability, and I think you're going to love it. So dive right into it, take the time, go through it, and at the end of the day, really what I want you to get from this is that it's possible. I want you to take action on something. So focus on that. Take a listen to the episode. If you have any questions whatsoever, just send me a note and I'll be glad to get back to you. But one thing you want to do on this is definitely take action. Have fun. On this episode of Fee-Based Financial Planning Mastery, I'm going to finish my multi-part series that deals with the 3 stages that every fee-based financial planning practice must pass through in order to create tremendous value for their clients and serious wealth for themselves.
Running a successful fee-based financial planning business is tough, and escaping the shackles of a commission-based financial planning practice is terrifying. When all you want to do is learn from those who know, learn from financial planners who are there on the front lines doing it each and every day. What if you could just open their kimono and take a look inside to learn what works and what doesn't? Now there's a place where the secrets to running a fee-based financial planning business are revealed to those who believe. Fee-based financial planning mastery. Ease your mind.
Hi everyone, it's Scott Plaskett here, and thanks for joining me. In this podcast, you will learn what's working and what's not in the world of fee-based financial planning. In each episode, I'm going to open my kimono and let you take an insider's look at what's working and what's not in my practice to help you take your business to the next level. I've been a fee-based certified financial planner since the early 90s, so believe me, I know the challenges you're facing. So get ready to learn not from a teacher, coach, or guru, but from a colleague who's on the front lines just like you. And I'd like to invite you to subscribe to my email internet newsletter to get the most up-to-date tips on how to build and grow your fee-based financial planning practice by going to feebasedfinancialplanningmastery.com. Hey everybody, I just want to give you a bit of an update on what's going on in my neck of the woods. It's actually been a while since I've put an episode together. I had to take a bit of a break from the end of the year through to January, February. Things just got incredibly busy on my end, and the day job kind of took over and had to really just handle the volume that was coming through on that. There were just a lot of projects that were on the go, and at the end of the day, something had to give, and putting out the show for all those months. After a while, anyways, life was just getting pretty hectic on my end. So burnout was starting to set in, and I had to make some decisions. So anyways, I think in going forward, January and February are going to be dark months for me when it comes to the show, simply because there's so much going on in my neck of the woods when it comes to that with regards to business. And in Canada here, we've got January and February are generally busy months. December is actually quite busy for me as well. And so there's just a lot going on. So I just wanted to say thank you to all of those who sent out emails to me asking what was going on, if I was okay, or, that they really missed the show and they were waiting for the next show and all this sort of stuff. So I really appreciate that. And it really tells me that there's a lot of people who are really engaged with the show and really want to hear more about what's going on. And I tell you, I'd love to hear more from you. So as I say, if there's ever any questions or anything like that, love to hear about them. If you ever have any comments or questions that you want to have answered on the show, then send me a note, send me an email, and just put some details down. We've had lots of people do that in the past, and we continue. I mean, I'd say about every week I'm getting new information or new questions from people. And some of the questions are similar questions, but there's some really unique ones that come through every so often, and that's part of what sort of drives me in putting together some of the content for the show. I want to give a shout out to the newest members of the Fee-Based Financial Planning Mastery LinkedIn group. And if you haven't joined the group, then by all means, go into LinkedIn and just search for the group Fee-Based Financial Planning Mastery. You do need to be a practicing financial advisor or financial planner to join the group, so make sure that does show up on your profile in LinkedIn, and definitely go in there and click on join, and then I'll get a notification and I'll be able to go in and check it out, and should the approval process usually happens pretty quickly. But I want to give a shout out to Sam Salini. to Lance Garraway, and everybody, I do apologize if I screw up your name. John Milner, Glenn McLeod, Jonathan Branton Casey, Jamie Burr, Jean-Pierre Laporte. We've got here Sajad Hussein, Scott Jacobs, Corey Edwards, Scott Coopersmith, new members, Jeff Twitty, Bruce Moffat. Guys, I appreciate everybody joining the group and just participating in the group. I think there's lots of great discussions going on in there, really interesting discussions, and a bit of an overview on the discussions. Want to make sure that the discussions are appropriate to the group. One of the things I've been praised on and received some good positive feedback on in the groups are emails from people saying, hey, you know what, I really appreciate the way you keep the group nice and pure, and there's really just great content in there. So if you're promoting things like a stock tip or something like that, it's probably not the group for you, because that's not really what we're wanting to do in the group. We really want to just focus on fee-based financial planning, sort of taking the industry, and sort of this is kind of the group that leads the charge in direction for how business models and how business financial planning businesses can thrive in the current economy and new economy. So if you have information that you come across that sort of supports that message, then by all means, if you have questions in there as well, you can post your questions, and there's lots of people who will jump in and respond to those questions. So anyways, yeah, just check that out, and if you haven't already joined the group, do so. It's a fantastic group. Numbers are growing every single week, and yeah, it's really sort of I feel it's a group that is going to lead the charge going forward. So that's where we're at with the group. What else have we got here? Thanks to everybody who's been leaving iTunes reviews. If you haven't left an iTunes review, I really appreciate it. We have a really unique show. It's a very niche focused show, and this fee-based financial planning mastery show is really specifically for financial planners who are just looking to unshackle themselves with the shackles that have held them back from really expanding and exploring the root of financial planning and how to make it work in their business. And anyways, it's a niche show, so it's not a really high number thing, but so we're not going to get tens and thousands and hundreds of thousands of people, because there aren't that many people who are interested in this topic. But if everybody on the show does go in and promote it or put a comment on iTunes, then what that does is it basically says to Apple, hey, this is a show worthwhile, and it really does then start to show up in the new and noteworthy and all that sort of thing. And we've got some great content. We've got I think the show's been downloaded over 60,000 times so far, so I'm really happy about that. Anyway, so I just wanted to mention thanks to all of those who have given the iTunes review. I do appreciate that. If you haven't given an iTunes review, I'd love to get that from you. Yeah, I appreciate that. So yeah, as I say, I had to take some time off from the show just to get our business going. What's interesting about this, and what I've found is putting this show together, I mean, it's actually done wonders for my business, because what it's forced me to do is really analyze my business on a regular, consistent basis. And by simply talking about it, it makes me aware of so many things that I can be doing and polishing and tweaking and fine-tuning in my business. And that's exactly what I do. That's kind of my nature. And as a result of putting the show together, it just simply allows me to do that. And then it allows me to talk about what worked and what didn't in the show. And it's just really, it's part of how all the content that I put together, it's where it comes from. It just comes from me trying stuff out every day and seeing if it works and building my business. And through all the talking about it, it's amazing if you just start talking about your business with close colleagues or mastermind groups or whatever. It's amazing what will start to happen as soon as you start paying attention to the business. And so, in this show that we're doing today, I think there's a ton of content. So get ready for that, and it's really hopefully going to put that third piece of the puzzle together on getting your business to the next level. So so really appreciate all the comments, and I really appreciate all the feedback from everybody and the concern that people had when suddenly the show stopped showing up. I do apologize. I probably should have put a notation on the website saying that I was basically going dark a little bit, but actually I wanted to get back, and I kept on every week trying to put the show together, but it just the days ran out and it never got done. So I do apologize for that, but just be aware that going forward, probably January and February is going to be some dark months where we won't be putting shows out. But who knows? Maybe we'll see if we can get ahead of the game here and get some other content put together that we can put out. So, anyways, that's kind of what's new with me, and I'm just going to sort of call it right there. I want to get right into the show. Don't want to take too much time on this. So yeah, let's get right to the show.
And now for our feature segment.
Okay, here we are on the home stretch of this series. Now, before I dive into the final phase of your business building venture, I want to do a bit of a recap on things. Now, let me start by reminding you of how important it is not to work through these phases, or not to work through everything we've talked about here out of sequence. So, go back 2 shows. I think it was episode 39. That's really where you need to start. If you haven't done everything in episode 39, don't go on to episode 40. And if you haven't done everything in episode 40, don't go on and start implementing the things that we've got in here, because they have to be built on one another. So just make sure you keep that in your mind. So phase 1, just as a refresher, was what I call the building a foundation stage. It's all about the embryonic stage of your business. It's all about, your baby. This is where you get to design things so that they happen your way, on your terms. And this is really where it all starts, because most people, when they want to get into business for themselves, because they just have their own way of wanting to do things, and they don't want to actually do it everybody else's way. They're, in essence, what I call not very good employees. This is where it starts. The goal at this stage is very simple. When you're in the building a foundation stage, you have one simple goal, and that goal is to get out of the stage as quickly as possible. For those of you who are listening who have kids, this stage is a lot like when you had your first child. It's a wonderful time of life. It's, you did what you needed to. You were always starved for time. Your sole focus was really your newborn. Your life kind of revolved around the baby. You were, in many cases, sleep deprived. Your routines were totally different. Working out, well, when was that going to happen anymore? Seeing friends, yeah, maybe. See your spouse, well, yeah, kind of tag team parenting, where you sort of walk by each other and high five when it's your turn to take over. I mean, it was a busy time. Looking back, you'd probably have, I don't know if you would, would you have given this stage up for anything? Probably not. And the other thing is, you're probably glad it's over. Now, don't get me wrong. I never minded the baby stage. When we had kids, it was a wonderful stage. I have such fond memories looking back, and especially because my wife was so into taking pictures, and still is into taking pictures, that we have a lot of that recorded in photographs and video and whatnot. And so we've gone back through them every so often, and it tugs at my heartstrings. It was such a wonderful, wonderful time. But I mean, you got to go back to that time and think about it. I mean, did you really mind, changing your children's diapers? Did you, did it really bother you? No, it wasn't. I mean, it was gross for sure, but I don't know, for whatever reason, it wasn't anything that was a problem. It was pretty much an always inconvenient time. But your baby was your baby that you do anything for. But now that you're through this stage and enjoying all that the next stages have to offer, you really never want to go back to the beginning. I mean, if you do, maybe it's because you wanted to have more children and whatnot, but it's nothing I don't really long for changing diapers. I don't long for, staying up all night, or midnight feedings, or whatever it happens to be. I don't long for that. I just long for, those memories are really fond memories for me. And this is exactly the way it is with your business. The building a foundation stage is a great stage that you really only want to go through once, maybe twice. So remember, the goal in this stage is to get through it as quickly as possible. The nice thing is that the time it takes to get through this stage is totally up to you. And with the information from this series, the Fee-Based Financial Planning Mastery website and the Fee-Based Financial Planning Mastery Academy, you should be able to get through this stage very, very quickly. If you haven't listened to episode 39, stop this episode and go right back to that episode first. That's what I would really recommend you do. Don't really spend the time going through this one yet, because some of the stuff may not make sense until you've gone back and listened to the Building a Foundation one. So go ahead and do that if you haven't. It'll just simply help you focus on the single most important thing at that stage, which is your value equation. And the whole FEE039 show is all about creating your value equation. If you don't have this in place, nothing else matters. Get this in place, and you will truly have a foundation to build upon, which then is kind of phase 2, what I call the securing the future stage. Okay, so you at this point know how you do what you do and who you do it for. That's what the securing the future stage is all about. Now, in this stage, you're focusing on building which some of you may have heard the term a self-managing and self-sustaining business. I know right now Dan Sullivan's talking a lot about self-managing companies and whatnot, but really this is what this stage is all about. It's nothing new. It's nothing that anybody is, it's nothing revolutionary, but it is an important part of the stage when building your business. This is where what I say, this is where the fun truly begins. This is where you get to build your lifestyle business. When you're in the building a foundation stage, lifestyle is the farthest thing from your mind. I mean, it's really, as I say, it's survival stage at that point. It's just doing whatever it takes to get beyond, to get past this stage. Now, you have no lifestyle in the building a foundation stage, like I said, but once you climb out of that stage, you can begin to make lifestyle decisions around the future of your business. During the securing the future stage, you're making better decisions about how your business evolves. You're training your clients, you're training your staff, you're building systems, you're monitoring everything, and it's all based on what you want to create and how you want to create it. The problem at this point is that you are still sitting with your finger in every pot, which is great, but time consuming. And you're beginning to realize that the reason why the business isn't growing past a certain point, i.e., you've hit that what's known as the invisible ceiling, or that ceiling of complexity, whatever you want to call it, that's kind of holding you back. It's that you're overwhelmed and you need help. Well, now, once you've hit that point where you sort of have everything going, but you're now feeling just completely overwhelmed, now you're at the beginning of phase 3. This is called the scalability stage. I love this stage. It's a very powerful stage. However, it is something that does require a little more effort, but this is where the true wealth is created in this business. Okay, so let's dive now into phase 3, the scalability stage. Let's dive right into this, and I'm going to go through in as much detail as I can so that you can really, garner as much from this as possible. So the first step in this stage is to take some time away from your business so you can focus on one thing. And that one thing is putting your business onto one sheet of paper. That's right, one sheet. Your entire business needs to be put on one sheet of paper. Now, keep in mind that I never said it had to be an 8.5 by 11 sheet of paper. I just said it has to be one document. So the tools that I use, my favorite tool for this is to use a mind mapping program or a diagram tool. And we've talked about them in the past, but for mind mapping, or for the best mind mapping program that I've come across, you can just in the show notes click on the link to setting up a free account with MindMeister, and that's my favorite cloud-based mind mapping tool. That's what I use every single day for everything. I seem to use it. I mean, I don't know. I just seem to be using it more and more and more. I'm doing more presentations with it. I did a presentation in one of the advocates groups invited me to present, and I did a full presentation just by using a mind map. It wasn't very polished in the sense that it had graphics and all. It was just a mind map. But I tell you, everybody loved the way it flowed, and sort of when people see it, it's amazing. I've talked about it in previous episodes. So if you haven't used mind mapping, go check out the link to MindMeister in the show notes, or in the tools or resources or toolbox section of the website. You'll love it. You'll absolutely love it. And there's clicking on that link lets you set up a free account. I think it lets you do 3 or 4 mind maps that you can create, and then I think I'm paying something like $10. $10 is it $10 a month? No, maybe it's $10 a year. I don't know. It's really not a lot of money for setting it up, and I just have hundreds and hundreds of mind maps that I use. My staff uses them. We share them with each other. It's a great tool. We also for this purpose, you can actually, if you're more visual in the sense that you want to see a little more diagram type things, you can use a diagram program. And I'd use one of 2 programs. I've used both Gliffy, Gliffy, and Lucidchart, Lucidchart. You just Google those terms, or in the show notes again, you'll see a link to those two programs. Either one will allow you to map out your business process from beginning to end, and that's what this whole process is about. That's what, by taking time away from your business and mapping out your business, that's what you're going to accomplish. Now, this becomes more of a visual thing, but see if you can follow along with the way I'm outlining it in this audio in the podcast, because anyways, I'm going to talk about it, but then you're going to have to put it onto your own tool, because you do want to be able to see it visually. in order to just be able to see how everything fits together. So why am I saying to do this? Why are you doing this? Well, the reason is so that you can identify very simply everything that needs to get done in your business. So you can either hire other people to do these tasks and do those tasks the way you would do them. I mean, that's what's important about this is that you not only want to say to people, okay, I need you to do this, but you also need to be able to tell them what the end result looks like, what the finished product looks like, because you want to be able to get some consistency in how you're putting all this together. So remember in a previous episode when I mentioned the best definition I've ever come across of an entrepreneur? Okay, that was Mike Michalowicz in his book, The Pumpkin Plan. And if you haven't listened to that book, go get the book. It's a fantastic read. Anyways, he says in that book, entrepreneurs identify the problems, discover the opportunities, and then build processes to allow other people and other things to do the work. The scalability stage, in essence, is the stage where you allow other people and other things to do the work for you. So this is the first step then in identifying what work needs to be done. You've got to be able to sort of map it out. And that's why I say put it onto one sheet of paper, because that first step is what's going to allow you to get there. So now this is how you would kind of map out your scalability stage mind map. Okay. So you're going to break it into a variety of different stages. I've broken down my business, and really, I think the financial planning business, I think I've broken it down into a variety of core components. And those core components are, and I don't know, again, you can just determine how you want to do it. If you want to turn each component into a sort of a main central topic and then have everything branch off of it, or if you want to have it like a conveyor belt, sort of a funnel approach or whatever. But basically, it starts off with marketing, then sales, then fulfillment, then maintenance, and then profit. Okay, so that's really the 4 or 5 components of your business that you need to nail down from beginning to end for each of these components in order to put this whole document together. And by doing so, you're going to be able to see such clarity in how your business runs. So let's start off with marketing. So in this case, picture either a funnel or conveyor belts or some other visual that allows you to see kind of the visual flow of things. In my practice, I have a saying, the content is the campaign. Well, what this means is that when we identify a piece of content that we want to market, the content becomes the marketing campaign. Then we identify the different distribution channels that we will use to offer the content through. So for example, and again, all of this comes back to the way I do our promotion and marketing, which is through education-based direct response advertising and marketing and whatnot. So we create content. So a piece of content that we have is called the 6 mistakes retirees make with their finances and how to avoid them. Okay, so we've put together reports and videos and all this sort of thing that goes along that. So we now say, okay, well, if that's one of our pieces, one of our content, and this is in the marketing section, so then I would, if it was in a mind map, I would say, okay, the next node or the child node, and in mind maps, those little circles are called nodes, is going to be the content. So the content is the campaign 6 mistakes retirees make. Now, the channels to which I offer the content through would be through seminars. So we have a whole seminar program that goes through all the 6 mistakes, and we promote that program through flyers and Facebook and newspaper ads and that sort of thing. We also offer the online videos through Facebook ads. We'll sometimes just send flyers out just to get people to get traffic to the website for that. All of these channels would then be, we'd use what's called split testing, and we're constantly split testing and running them to always be enhancing the results of each promotional channel. So for example, if it's a Facebook ad, well, I'm going to run 2 Facebook ads, and at the same time, both promoting the same content, but I'm going to change one thing in the ad, and that simply allows us to track which one's doing better, so we can shut down the one that's not doing very well and focus more of our energies on the ones that are doing very well. But then we always bring another split test in to say, okay, how can we change one other thing? Maybe it's the color of a headline, maybe it's the word in the headline or something, and see if that garners more results. So we're always testing against one another. So this is where it starts. For us, it starts with the content. So I have my marketing. I've got my first piece of content, which is the 6 mistakes content. And then I say, okay, how am I going to get that out there? So I do it through all the different channels. Now, your marketing stages have goals. Okay, so stage one is to identify people who are interested in your content. So really, it's your niche market. Then you go to stage two, which is to capture their information so you can begin a nurturing relationship with each person. And then on to stage three, where you automate the whole nurturing program. Always focus on filling the marketing funnel with as many qualified leads as you can. This entire process should be systematized and automated as much as possible, because it becomes a big thing. And if you haven't sort of got it set up for automation and have it so that it just happens automatically, you're simply not going to do it. Every piece of content you create that you offer, should be split tested, and there should be some split tests running on it. Always try and beat your better results. Every landing page that you use to capture those leads should have a split test. So are you getting the message when it comes to split testing? You need to do a lot of it. So at the end of the day, you should be able to track the following core metrics for all of your marketing. So the first thing is you want to be able to say, okay, what were my total numbers of total distributed? If I had flyers, how many flyers did I send out? And then how many new leads did I get as a result of sending out those flyers? What was my ROI? So my total revenue to the total cost that I paid. So if I paid $1,000 to mail out 5,000 flyers, okay, what was my ROI on that? You need to be able to track that. Now, remember that the time it takes to get a new client from, point of, getting a new lead and nurturing that lead could take some time. So you better have good systems in place in order to track that over a longer period of time. Because you may have a great marketing campaign that takes 6 months, 8 months, 10 months before a new lead or new clients start appearing. But if you stopped and didn't track that, you might go back and say, okay, over last year, what were all the campaigns that I ran? Which ones were the most profitable? If you don't have an easy way of getting that, you could miss some huge value there. Then there are some micro metrics that you also want to be tracking. So things like total views, so how many eyeballs to the total reach. This allows you to determine if your ad is working. Okay, so in Facebook, for example, if you have you put an ad together and your reach is maybe 10,000 people or 1,000 people or whatever it happens to be, then the question is, well, how many people viewed that ad? And so you want to see what that metric is. You also want to see, well, how many total leads compared to the total views. So if you had 100 views, well, how many leads did you get from those 100 views? And this allows you to determine if your landing page is working. Total new clients to total new leads. So it's basically if I got 5 new clients and it took me 1,000 leads to do that, okay, well then this helps you determine what your lead conversion ratio is. Total new clients to total new appointments. So this allows you to determine if your sales process is working, and that's important. I mean, when we get into following sections here, tracking all of these numbers is vitally important to be able to determine what do you need to do next? What do you need to tweak? Otherwise, you're just kind of shooting in the dark. Once you've mapped out this process, this is the process of how you market your content to develop leads, to nurture, to garner new prospects, and those new prospects are hopefully going to then garner new appointments. This is what your marketing is there to accomplish. And because of how I recommend setting things up, you can systematize the entire process. It takes a little bit of heavy lifting up front, but once you've got it set up, it kind of just runs itself. Then at the end of this process, you can build a report that you can monitor. That you can basically use to monitor and manage the whole department. Because at the end of the day, you don't want to be doing this, but you also want to be able to monitor, is that department being successful? And if you haven't got sort of a report that you can monitor very simply, a push button, one-page report that says, okay, for last month, these are the number of campaigns that we ran. This is how much we spent. These are the number of new leads. This is the number of new appointments. This is the number of new clients. If you don't have a report that can get that, that's what you need to get to. And that's hopefully what you're garnering from this section on marketing, is the fact that you've got to get to that point. So that's kind of the marketing side. So you then want to take a look at what are all the campaigns, and you may find that by doing this, you get to a point where you look to see, okay, well, how many campaigns have I got? And you say, okay, well, I've got one campaign. Okay, well, you know what? One campaign is not enough. You need to have multiple campaigns running all the time. I've seen some studies that show you need anywhere from 6 to 8 campaigns running constantly. Now, getting to that point, you don't just want to do 6 to 8 because you can blow your brains out. You want to sort of manage that process, but you do need to start ramping things up to get to that point. So as you get a campaign that's starting to, garner some good leads and whatnot, then you can say, okay, there's that one process. There's that one campaign. Now I can turn that one onto autopilot. And then let's move on to another one. Let's create a new piece of content and really just keep that process going. So it does take some time, but man, it makes huge sense as time goes on, especially as you start to see the volumes increase and the number of views start to increase. So now let's go into the sales component. So this is the next section. So marketing is all about getting people, getting leads, getting people aware of your stuff. Sales is all about having those conversations with people to convert them into clients. Now, the sales process starts when the marketing process stops. So as soon as you get a new appointment from your marketing, your sales process starts at that point. Now, do the same thing here. Map out your entire process. So your process is probably going to look something like this, and it's kind of similar to what my process is. Step 1 is where you have your appointment confirmation contact. Remember, it's all starting at the point at which a contact makes an appointment with you. So at that point, boom, you're in sales mode. So what is step 1? Step 1 for us is an appointment confirmation contact. So we do things like we send out an email that confirms the appointment. It sort of sets them up on what to bring to their appointment, what not to bring to their appointment, has some credibility pieces there, some testimonial pieces, directions to our office, all that sort of stuff. Then we move on to step 2, which is the actual appointment. So getting ready for that appointment. There's pre-meeting procedures, during meeting procedures, and post-meeting procedures for that appointment number 1. So appointment number 1, pre-meeting procedures are things like, how does your new prospect get greeted when they walk in the office, right? So as soon as they walk in that door, what's the process? What's the orchestration that you've created? It's kind of a theater type thing. How have you trained your staff to welcome somebody new into the office? What does your reception area look like? Are there credibility pieces on the wall, or are there fund company or investment company pieces on the wall that are really just promoting somebody else's business? Does it kind of promote your image? All the pieces that you've got, all the look and feel of your reception area. Does it help your cause, so to speak? Does your staff have a procedure to follow for greeting a prospect by name, providing them guidance for the office? Either, here's the coat room. What can I get you from a beverage standpoint? Here's a list of what we have available. You really just to set expectations. We do things like, we'll record what type of beverage a person has and what they have in their beverage. So, basically, when they come to their second meeting, we can have that already prepared for them. Or my staff can then say to them, Mr. Smith, can I get you another herbal tea with lemon in it, just like you had last time? Well, it's amazing. People will they respond positively to that. Now, they may look through that and go, oh, you recorded that. But you know what? That's fine. That sort of speaks to the level of detail that you're willing to go to make them feel comfortable. People like positive intent. So just because they recognize that maybe you recorded that on them doesn't mean that it's a bad thing. And then at the pre-meeting procedure, so we prepare a meeting package for the planner. So my staff basically takes care of all of that stuff. Then during the meeting, we have a meeting agenda, sort of an outline of what we're going to be talking about. I've got a sort of an introductory script that I use, and it's really the same messaging each time. And then we go through the meeting. Then after the meeting, what's the procedure for getting the coat from the coat room? What do we do afterwards for sending, if meeting with somebody for a second time is warranted, what do we send them afterwards? Is there a package that we give them at the meeting so that they can, have a checklist of information to gather together for the next meeting? Do we send them a follow-up item in, electronically? Has the second meeting been booked? So is there an actual date? Or if they just said, okay, yeah, let's get together again, but, maybe the meeting's not on the calendar, so that needs to get done. So what are the pre-meeting, during meeting, and post-meeting procedures for that appointment number 1? Then we move on to appointment number 2, which is, again, pre-meeting procedures. So having the prospect file ready for the planner is with all the necessary documents in it. So my staff knows that, if they see a meeting 2 coming up, then they need to go grab the prospect's file. There's some certain documents they want to have in the folder, so to speak, that I can use for the executing the meeting. And then during the meeting, again, I've got sort of an agenda that I go through with the client. There's similar phraseology and scripting that I use to explain the purpose of the meeting. And that really sets expectations, because if people are just kind of there, really they're thinking, okay, what kind of pressure are they going to put on me to try and become a client? But, my process, and if you've listened to some previous shows, I've kind of gone through it, but my process is basically saying, listen, at the end of this meeting, we're going to both know whether or not it makes sense to move forward. I'm going to be able to tell you yes or no, and I'd expect that back from you as to whether or not you want to move forward. So basically, it gets rid of the maybes. So appointment number 2, during the meeting, we've got the scripting that we go through. We present the fee at that point. We charge the fee. We go through a letter of engagement. Then after the meeting, there's fulfill what the client has asked for. So, there's an initial sending out a new client welcome kit, and then there's the putting the base plan information. I mean, it's all there. Now, if you can outline the steps required for each step here, you can put what I call a unique method or unique methods together. Or you can program this into your contact management system like we've done. And basically what this does is it gives you reliability that the process is going to be followed every single time. So if you can then hire somebody to do a lot, if not all of the steps that we've just itemized here, because it's the same steps each time, then you can identify what aspects of the stages are important for you to monitor. Because again, you don't want to be, as a business owner, you got to get it to a point where you can then leverage it off and get other people doing it, but you need to be able to monitor things and be able to oversee what's going on. So, you want to ask yourself, well, what are the number of new clients that we've been getting versus, to the number of initial meetings? So you want to be able to see if you can pull that metric from your system, or at least track that metric. What are the average planning fees per new client? And so you can monitor that going along. So you can, that can help for some planning purposes as well. So that's kind of the sales process, is just map out what you do. And again, this is important for you to map it out the way you do things, because it's all about this business being an extension of you. So now we move on to fulfillment. And this one, I tell you, this one really catches people off guard. At the stage of the overall process, you need to focus on your costs. Okay, so I'm going to back up for a second here. What do you think is the number 2 reason why people don't want to migrate over to a fee-based financial planning approach like I'm proposing here? Well, I say number 2, remember, because the number 1 reason why people don't want to, or are kind of afraid to migrate over to a fee-based model, is they don't know how they're going to get paid. In other words, they're afraid of that, what I call the dreaded revenue dip. So the first reason why people say, oh no, I don't know if I could make that transition, they're just afraid they're not going to be able to make ends meet. They're afraid they're not going to get paid what they need to get paid. So the dreaded revenue dip is number 1. And by the way, if you've listened to my previous shows, you'll also know that I've solved the problem of the revenue dip, and you can go back and listen to some of those previous shows on how to do that, because in itself, that's an entire show. So what's the number 2 reason is my question, why people don't migrate to a fee-based model. Now, before I answer this question, you need to understand the model I'm talking about, okay? Because when I say fee-based model, some people have their own idea of what that model is. And so I'm going to basically just explain to you what I'm talking about when I'm talking about transitioning into a fee-based model. So the fee-based model to me is where you charge a fee, and I recommend you charge it right to your client's credit card, for the development of their financial plan. Okay? The plan is billed to the credit card. There's a set fee for the financial plan. That's number 1. Then you also charge a fee, and I recommend in this case it's going to be a percentage of assets, for the implementation and oversight of their investment plan and for coordinating it with their overall financial plan. Then, because I live in Canada and we currently can't really unbundle the insurance side of things, then you also receive commissions from any insurance solutions that you put in place. So that's kind of the model I'm talking about. It's the starting out with financial planning first and charging a fee for that. So what's the second reason why people are afraid or don't do a good job of migrating their practices to a fee-based financial planning model? Well, it's very simple. Their cost of fulfillment, what it costs them to put this whole plan together, is greater than the revenue they're receiving. So, that's one of the big challenges that I'm seeing is that people don't realize that what they're doing, you need to be able to make sure that it's a profitable process. So this is a critical part of the process. Okay. So basically on fulfillment, I've heard other financial advisors say that they don't want to do the financial planning because it takes too long. Financial planning is, there's no money in that. You can't make money in that. Well, I'd agree that the typical approach in developing and building a comprehensive financial plan takes way too long. And I'm saying the typical approach. And I blame this on the mutual fund companies and the financial planning software companies who have kind of nurtured this long, tedious process. So when you think of financial planning, tell me if this is what you think about, right? Tell me if this kind of is in line with what you traditionally think of as steps that you'd go through on a financial plan. So step number one, that you try to get the client to provide you with all of the details required so that you can properly add their details to your financial planning software program. So it's data gathering. So step number one, it's very challenging to get all the data you need in order to put it into the software. Step number two is where you're trying to figure out, either with or without the client, which financial planning scenarios to analyze. So what are the different renditions that you can create? What are the different scenarios you can put together to help you analyze which is the best scenario to move forward with? Step number three, taking a lot of time to create the various scenarios you've determined with the client, if they're possible, and then putting these scenarios on the financial planning software system. So really it's identifying, okay, what are the different scenarios that I can do? But then you want to be able to have a conversation with a client to say, okay, what are the scenarios that you think are important? So you want to gather that information, and that takes time. Step four, comparing all of the scenarios to determine which one is the best for the client to move forward with. And this is really, I think this is probably the highest, the one that takes the most time is for, the planners who sit there and they analyze so many different scenarios, trying to find the optimal scenario where they can say to the client, listen, I've analyzed everything and I know this is your best, most efficient way of moving forward. So then we go to step five, which basically is meeting with the client to then review each scenario, to then have the client provide you with an adjustment that they would like to analyze. So one of the problems is that you sit down and oftentimes the planner puts together all the scenarios, and then when you sit down to do the presentation, the client says, well, what about this? It wasn't part of the scenarios you put together. So it either forces you to do it on the fly with the client right there, which, with some of these planning software programs, the results, you've really got to analyze sometimes the results, because a client may have a scenario that you run, you put into the information, and you may expect a certain number to go up when actual fact it goes down, and you can't quite figure out why that is. You don't want to be bumbling and fumbling in front of a client. So oftentimes it requires going to a next meeting, going behind the scenes and doing all the planning work, just determine, okay, have I got everything covered here? Then step six is analyzing the investment portfolio that the client has to, that needs in order to move forward. So what you're doing is you're saying, listen, give me your information and I'm going to analyze your portfolio and see if we can't do a better job. So of course, you're going to take the time to try and build what's called a better portfolio. Again, that takes time. Step seven, developing the proper documents to prove your portfolio is better than the one that the client brought in order to motivate them to move their assets over to your administration. And that's where a lot of the fund companies are really focused. And they said, listen, we're going to give you software. We're going to call it financial planning software. But at the end of the day, it's going to just help you analyze the existing portfolio they have and then do comparative analysis to then see if we can't build a better portfolio, build a better mousetrap, so to speak. And so this is what you spend your time learning and figuring out and putting together and all that sort of stuff. Then in step seven, you got to develop the proper documents to prove your portfolio is better than the moat they talked about. So this is where you then say, okay, now that I found the portfolio, how can I present that to a client in such a way that they can understand it? So you spend some time on putting that type of an analysis together. Hopefully, in that case, you then turn to the fund companies and hopefully they've got some good, reporting tools and whatnot. But, sometimes it's not the case. Then you move on to step eight, where analyze their insurance needs to determine whether or not they're appropriately covered. Then step nine, have a meeting with them to review their insurance needs and review the recommendations to try to motivate the client to move forward with your recommendations. Then you move on to step 10, to have meetings to deal with any of the follow-up questions. And it could keep going on and on and on, where you're constantly going back to the drawing board and you're tweaking the plan, and you're coming back and analyzing things. And that seems to be the typical approach. Now, so what do you do? Because that approach, honestly, doesn't work. So you need to change your approach. Well, my approach is simply saying, well, first of all, you need to get paid. So that's step number one. You need to get paid. This is why the process I promote has clients pay you 50% of their financial planning fee up front to compensate you for the time you're going to put into the financial planning side of this. And remember, as the great Joe Polish once said, when people pay, they pay attention. And that's an important point, because oftentimes planners are saying, well, I can't do all this financial planning work because there's so much work involved. I got to move on to what pays the bills. And so they try to fast track the way of putting together a plan, or what they try to call a plan, so that they can convince the client to move forward with their recommendations. Well, I'm saying, no. Let's take a step back. Bill your client first. You need to actually charge them a fee for the plan writing services. And so that's why the first two meetings, the setup of all of this, is so important. And one of the reasons why we put the academy together was so that we can start coaching people on actually how to execute those initial meeting conversations, so that when it does come time to getting people to move forward with your services, they are willing and wanting to pay you 50% up front to get things started. As a result of that simple act of paying, that makes them so engaged in the whole process. Now, in order to complete your fulfillment, you need to have some sort of financial planning software to dump all of the client's data into, so that you can gain some clarity on where they're at today, and to provide them with insight into what their options are moving forward. So this is where I believe most financial planning software fails, because I've seen that it just takes forever. Most financial planning software is what I call scenario driven. And this is exactly the type of software I recommend staying away from, because you could analyze scenarios forever. And the one thing I know for sure is that whatever scenario your client says, okay, I want to move forward with that, it will not happen. There are too many variables that will take place that will not allow that scenario to come to fruition. So basically, all that scenario planning is wasted. And it's a waste of your time. So here's the way I see it. Traditional financial planning software is trying to narrow down choices to the single best solution or recommendation or whatever. Kind of like a funnel. It's like you pour all the scenarios into the top of the funnel and see which one, after all the testing you do, comes out at the bottom. And you've got that, what you call the magic scenario, the magic final. This is what you need to do. Now, the problem with that is it's limiting. And it's time consuming. I feel that you need to put one scenario, the one you know to be true, into the software. So which scenario do you know to be true? Well, the only scenario you know today to be true is where they're at today. You know that as of a certain date what their net worth is. You know everything about that because that's what the information that you know. So you get as current as you can. The software then is not a tool that should do the financial planning for you, which is what a lot of software has been developed and tried to do. It's a tool that allows you to justify what I call your story. So what is your story? Well, your story is, when you're talking to a client, is actually the client's story. It's you basically giving them clarity on everything they need to know about their situation and what they've done to get to the point at which they're at right then and there. This is all the client is interested in knowing about. They just want to know about their story. And the story has the following components in it. Okay, and these are the four things whenever I'm talking with clients and presenting their story to them through the fulfillment side of things. This is what I want to make sure we cover. We cover what their attainable income is expected to be. So that's part of the story. We also cover what their attainable retirement age is, what I like to call their financial freedom date. We also then we take a look at, okay, what is the required rate of return that this plan needs in order to be fulfilled, in order to accomplish its goals. What their we also want to know is what's their current net worth and so on, what their current annual investment needs are in order to accomplish their goal. So that can go in a couple of ways. So the first one is if their attainable income, so the income that we indicate they're on track for, is lower than what their goal is, then our system comes back and says, okay, well then you need to, save this much. You're currently saving this much, but you need to save this much more in order to accomplish that goal. Okay, that's approach number one. But then the other thing is that they may come back and maybe they're on track for a number that is they're completely fine with. Well, then what we can do is we can say, okay, well, if you're completely fine with that number, and we can really focus on what those needs are. If you're comfortable with that, then I can now go back and tell you how much of your liquid net worth today you don't need, and so that you can still accomplish your financial freedom date. And that's an important question. Like, I had a client come to me one time and say, listen, I'm thinking about buying a cottage, but I don't want buying a cottage. I don't want that to sacrifice my ability to retire when I want. So we ran through the analysis and said, okay, well, you know what? You're on track for this level of income. You've indicated you don't need that much. So you've got a bit what I call surplus built up into your plan. So that means we know that this much surplus in today's dollars, so this much of your investment accounts today, are really not even needed for your retirement planning. So you can take those assets out. You can buy a cottage with them if you want. I tell you, they were so appreciative of that approach because they were able to then come back and say, wow, that's amazing. I now know I can accomplish my goal of retiring when I want, but I can go in and start enjoying my money today. And that's really what financial planning is about, isn't it not? So your fulfillment process needs to be what I call as long as a mini skirt. Okay. So your process needs to be long enough to cover the essentials, but not too long so that you begin to lose interest. Okay. So map out what steps you're currently going through on your fulfillment process. Now ask yourself, is it taking too long? I mean, if you just off the top of your head, ask yourself, what is wrong with my fulfillment process? Maybe your first comment is, gosh, it takes so long to get to the end. Ask yourself, are the results that you're coming up with, is it meaningful to the client? Does the client get it? Does it motivate the client to take action? Is it logical? Is that what the client gets from that? See, my fulfillment process looks something like this. Plan presentation part 1. So that's the first time we actually take a look at their draft plan. So I review the base plan, which really, explains exactly where the client is today and what they're on track for. Then we have a conversation as to whether or not what they're on track for is what they're hoping for. If not, then we review the variables that can affect the outcome and ask the client to tell us which variables they want to change. And then we record those changes. Then we make those changes on the plan. So, it's as if they're saying to us, listen, I'm totally willing to maybe go with a different type of portfolio in order to earn that rate of return or what have you. So, so we just basically get them to engage because really they're the ones that have to make the decisions. Then from that, we know that there's got to be some action that gets taken once we've done the planning side. So then we have what's called implementation and oversight meetings. And that's where we, have a sole meeting, like a meeting solely devoted to their implementation. And it's learning about what are the implementation steps, what are the implementation recommendations, learning about them and taking the time to go through that. And then we implement the investment plan on that case. Then we often will go into what I call plan presentation part 2, and that's where we revisit the updated plan because they may have had some changes or some little tweaks that they wanted in the plan, and they may have forgotten the results. So when we get together, we go through the results very, very quickly and say, okay, this is what we ended off with last time. Is this still in line? Because you know what? From meeting 1 and meeting 2, they've probably had conversations. If it's a couple, they've probably been talking to one another about the results. And so I just want to know if anything's changed in that. Then we identify for them the areas that we're concerned about. And these would be things like living benefits, life insurance, tax planning, estate planning, and really just get an understanding about their level of comfort with what we've found. And then if they say to us, okay, well, you know what, I really do want to spend some more time on figuring this one out. Okay, then that's a high priority. We bring that opportunity up. And then we go through implementation meetings. So the goal is by the end of all of our meetings is to go through as a complete once over for the plant or for the client so that we can then say, okay, and we're going to address all of these things. Now, it might take a whole year for us to address all of these things because there's a lot of moving parts. And so we'll coordinate the implementation meetings really just in order to make sure that nothing falls through the cracks. And, as new meetings are required, we just simply add them to the whole process because at each meeting, I try to keep the topic of each meeting limited to one thing. I don't want to deal with living benefits as well as life insurance and tax planning all in one meeting. It's just kind of overwhelming for the client. So a process like this provides you with cash flow, first of all, because remember, you're getting paid 50% up front, but then you're also getting a consistency of cash flow because your second half of the fee, in my recommendation, comes in 2 months. So it just allows you to sort of bridge that initial gap. Really, therefore, it eliminates the dreaded revenue dip. And if you really go through this process, you'll see that by keeping the process moving forward, you actually get the plan completed much sooner, which means you get to the implementation much sooner, which means your revenue starts to come in sooner. And that's really one of the big challenges that financial planners who are trying to migrate over have is the revenue dip. A process like this is profitable. It's repeatable and it's replenishable. So you can put resources toward the process to help magnify your rate of return. Once you know you've got a dialed in process that works, then you can very easily say, well, listen, if I take an extra $10,000 and direct it to that business, then that should translate into more revenue at the end of the day. But you won't know if it does because if you're not tracking. So that's why tracking is so important. Each opportunity that we identify through the financial planning process is tracked. Okay, it's recorded. It's dealt with, in sequence, so to speak. So it never gets lost. It never falls through the cracks. And if you can put a system in place where you can identify the opportunities and then just kind of put them in the client's file, but have an easy place where you can refer back to them, it's great because it means that you're touching everything. It's very compliant. I mean, compliance officers love this approach because you've documented everything. And you've basically said, listen, we're going to cover these. And maybe then when you have covered them, you've now got results. Okay, did the client move forward with it? Did they not? What did you present to them? All that information should be attached to your opportunities. So when you've completed each opportunity, you're now done with the initial financial planning for that client. And now this is where, so once the plan is done, so you've gone through the full planning process, you've identified all the opportunities, you've had all the conversations, you've implemented everything the client wants to implement. Now you are moving on to monitoring, because now monitoring or maintenance or whatever you want to call it, this is where I think the most important part of the whole process comes in. Maintenance is kind of your annual process for ensuring that a client's financial plan is always on track and relevant. We promote having 2 meetings a year with a client. We have what we call our mid-year review meeting and a full year review meeting. Now, at the mid-year review meeting, we basically, we review their plan to provide them with clarity so that they remember where they're at. So just giving them some of that peace of mind. We then add in any changes, any updates. Maybe they have an income update, or they've incurred debt, or they paid off debt early, or whatever it happens to be. So we just update that information in their plan. We review the performance of their investment account. So whatever they decided to implement, we want to review that performance just to see how it's doing relative to sort of what's happening in the economy, and then relative to their overall baseline required rate of return from their financial plan. We address any new life events that may have come up or changes that happen along the way. So there's many things that we're doing that are there. We're also reviewing all opportunities. So, you may have identified a whole series of opportunities. Well, again, you don't want to deal with them all at once, but you don't want to lose them. So by putting them on your system, you can then go back at the review meetings and identify some of those opportunities and say, hey, I want to revisit this with you because we haven't completed this process yet. Then in the full review meetings, we basically cover everything we did in the mid-year review meetings, but then we incorporate a lot of year-end tax strategies and whatnot into our planning. So remember, this is where the true financial planning comes in. I mean, this is what financial planning is all about. This is where most firms drop the ball and never look at a client's financial plan again, because all they wanted in the first place was the management of the assets or the selling of an insurance policy. This is where, you as an advisor can become a huge advisor, a huge trusted advisor towards a client. It's important because most people, the review meetings are critical to the long-term success of your financial planning practice. And the reason is because, these maintenance meetings, which clients are paying for, don't forget. We charge all of our clients an annual renewal fee to stay in the program and to keep working with us, and they gladly pay it. It's these clients who, once they become a client, they're the glue that keeps your business growing. these meetings as well can be documented, and then you can train the staff. And so that's where, identifying things up front, who you're doing it for, what you do, all that sort of stuff, but then being able to say to somebody, okay, you're going to handle this part of the process. You can outline it if you've drawn it up or if you've got it on a mind map. You can actually show them where they fit in so they can see how they fit in to the bigger picture. And that's kind of the essence along lines of team building. What else? We've got the meetings, can be, we talked about training and the staff and whatever. These areas of your business, all these different components, you do need to work them. You need to build processes around them, because remember the definition of entrepreneurship. Entrepreneurs identify, they discover problems, they identify the problems, they discover the opportunities, and then they build the processes to allow other people and other things to do the work. And that's the key component here. You've got to recognize that a lot of what you do in this stage, remember, this is the third stage. If you want to just stay in the second stage and just run your business and have your finger in every piece of the pie, well, that's fine, but you are going to get overwhelmed and you're going to stagnate. You're just not going to be able to grow to the serious next level. But if you do want to take it to the next level, you've got to be able to turn your business into an automated machine that other people can come and run for you. And if you don't do that, then that will run you out of business pretty quickly. So you've got to be able to hire properly, but also be able to give them the job descriptions on how to do it and what to do. So now we're off to profits. Profits. This is the bottom line. Are you making a profit? And you know what? A lot of financial planners, I would venture to guess, don't know if they're making a profit. So if you don't map out your profit ratios, you'll never get ahead. Here's what I mean. You need to be able to look at every component of your business, marketing, sales, fulfillment, maintenance, or monitoring, and be able to see if each section is profitable. So let me ask you, what are the most important things to you? Okay, and this is where it comes back. It's important to you because it's your comfort that you need to build here. What are the most important things to you in each section of your business? So in the marketing, I just kind of, jotted down a couple of notes here. So for me, the most important thing is, are we generating enough quality leads? I'm not looking for the highest number of leads, right? Because, I've heard people talk about hits. Oh, I got, 10,000 hits to my website per month. Well, you know what? I heard a great definition of the term hits. Hits, the definition of hits are how idiots track success, because it's not about the hits. It's not about the huge volume of leads you get to your site. It's about the quality of those leads. I will gladly take fewer leads if they are of much higher quality. Then on the sales side, so what's important on sales? Well, to me, it's, are we converting those quality leads that are calling in for appointments? Are we converting them into clients? Does that conversion happen, or are we meeting a lot of people but they're not saying yes? And so that's why we dial in our process, and we've dialed it in such a way that now I know if I meet with somebody and they qualify and they're pretty much a candidate for our services, there is an extremely high probability they are going to become a client. The odds of them not would be. Then on the fulfillment side, are your clients getting a quality solution from you? So are they raving about, wow, are you hearing comments at your meetings like, this was great. I totally get where you're coming from. It makes so much sense. I'm just so happy with this. And then on the maintenance side, are you building your maintenance client base? And so for me, we track what our future 12-month renewal revenue number is. So I'm just always looking forward 12 months, because I know as long as clients stay clients, then that gets added to this number. And then any new clients that come on once they've passed the 12-month mark, that number gets added to this number. So as long as I see that number growing, then I know that we're doing a great job on the maintenance side. So you see, this goes right back to making sure that each component of your business is predictable, repeatable, and replenishable. So by identifying the problems, discovering what your opportunities are, and building processes to allow other people and other things to do the work, you can finally consider yourself an entrepreneur. It's a big job to live up to what I consider being an entrepreneur. A lot of people call themselves entrepreneurs, but you know what? They're not. They've just created a glorified job. A true entrepreneur is just what I've said here. They They've discovered what their opportunities are. They're building processes to allow other people and other things to do the work. That's the power of it. But to build true wealth, you need to be able to walk away from the business for long periods of time and have it continually grow without you. You see, it's one thing to get your business running all tickety-boo, but if you still need to be there every single day, you haven't sort of finished that job. You need to be able to walk away for large periods of time and know that the business is going to be running around you, or running without you. So the ratios you want to be looking for at the end of the day to ensure you're profitable, well, we've talked about it in the past before. Or in the past, and really what those ratios are, that you want to ultimately see your numbers come in at the end of the year, and you can even just go back and see what your numbers were for last year, and use the number 40, 35, 25. Those are your three ratios. The 40 stands for 40% of your revenue needs to go towards salaries. 35% of your revenue needs to go towards operations, and 25% of your revenue needs to go towards profits, owner's profits. So how do you manage all of what we just talked about and still run your business profitably? Let me take a step back. So, taking that 40, 35, 25, if you go back and take a look at your financials for the previous year, that'll give you sort of an idea of where you're at. Now, you don't want to be sort of looking at least I found that I never wanted to be looking at it on a day-to-day or month-to-month or whatever basis and saying, okay, if I brought in $10,000, then I'm going to move $4,000 over to this account, $3,500 over to this account. I mean, I just never managed it that way. But what I did do was I created the most powerful thing in the world, and those things are what I created was called a dashboard. And the dashboard allows me, because remember how I said you don't want to be running the day-to-day, you don't want to be sort of in the business all the time, but you do need to be in control of the business. You need because you're responsible for it. So how do you do that? Well, you manage it through what's called dashboards. Being able to put on a single document everything that's important to you and have it all updated with the push of a button it's the ideal. So here's what I've done. I've created what's called profit accounting, or I use what's called a profit accounting spreadsheet that I update every single month. And actually, I manually do it myself. It's what I do. And I'm just going to explain what it is because it's going to give you some insight as to start to go down the road of the 40, 35, 25 path. Because most of the time, I bet you're probably at an 80-20-0 ratio would be how people usually start out. So this type of accounting doesn't replace the traditional accounting. It's just for you, the business owner. So it's the most important spreadsheet for monitoring your business. So every month, track the total revenues for that month. So what's the top line number? How much came in the door? Then subtract from that the total revenue that you're allocating to your profit distribution. So what I say there is take a percentage. Start at 5%, or if you want to go back and back test to a previous year, then you can see where your tolerance is. But if you don't want to do that, then start at 5%. Your goal by the end of the year is to work that profit distribution amount, which is the first number you subtract from your total revenue, up to 20%. From that, so you've got your total revenue coming in, then you've got your profit distribution, then you subtract from that the owner's salary or your draw or whatever you want to call it, because you got to get paid. I mean, remember the whole reason why you got into business was to make a profit and get paid. Okay, so we're gonna touch on that first. Then you're left with what's called your net operating revenue. Total revenue comes in, you take away your distribution, you take away your salary, and it's owner's salary. So if it's you and your spouse, okay, it's the combined salary for your household. Then you take away from that your fixed costs. Hopefully at this point you're still positive, okay? Then you take away from that your variable costs. And hopefully at this point you still are showing a bit of a positive. So what this has done is it's kind of turned your financials on their ear. Okay. The most important thing in business is to turn a profit. So why don't we do this from the get-go? Instead of waiting to the end of the year to see if you made a profit, take your profit immediately. Then you need to pay yourself your regular salary or whatever that happens to be. Then you need to pay your fixed expenses and staff. Then you need to pay your variable expenses. What this type of spreadsheet does for you is it allows you to know how much you can take out of your business before blacking out your business. And it allows you to see where your financial challenges may be. And this is one of the biggest powerful things that I found was that you're going to be able to see very quickly if you have a loss after your fixed expenses. and that you've seen that, consistently show up, then you've got a problem not in your variable expenses. You've got a problem in your fixed expenses. Either you're obviously not bringing enough revenue, so you need to get your expenses down to a level where you're profitable. So you need to just go and analyze those. What it allows you to do is it gives you insight into what part of your business you need to start analyzing. At the end of each quarter, then, remember, you've been earmarking a certain percentage of that total top line revenue that comes into this profit distribution account. At the end of each quarter, take 50% of those 3 months, whatever that total equals, take 50% of it and pay it out to yourself. That's your profit distribution. Then begin to look at your ratios. As time goes on, again, you want to see 40% going towards salaries, 35% going toward operations, and 25% profit. And then simply start working toward those numbers. Okay. Also what I've done is I've created what's called a solvency analysis. And these are little dashboard tricks that I use because I've identified certain things that are important to me so that I can run my business on the push of a button. So what is a solvency analysis? Well, basically, solvency analysis is where everybody has their own comfort level with their business. Okay, so let's just say, for argument's sake, let's say that maybe to run your business, it costs you $20,000 per month to run your business. You know that you've got to cover $20,000 per month, and that includes salaries and expenses and everything. It's just sort of, if you go back and look at your history, it kind of averages around $20,000 a month. Okay. So if I said to you, listen, in your bank account right now, in the cash position of your business, you have $10,000. And I said, if you look forward 60 days, so 2 months, you know that you're going to have to cover $40,000 of expenses over the next 2 months. And I'm telling you today that you have $10,000 in your business. How do you feel? Well, chances are you feel uncomfortable. Okay. Well, then now let me tell you that, okay, let's say you've got $40,000 in your business. Okay. There's sort of a bank account or whatever it happens to be, and you got $40,000 in your business. And you know that over the next 60 days, you're going to have to cover $40,000. Now, how do you feel? Okay. Probably a little bit better. But also, again, maybe it doesn't make you feel comfortable. But then if I said to you, well, listen, you've got $80,000 sitting in your business, and over the next 60 days, you're going to have to cover $40,000 worth of revenue. Okay, how do you feel now? Well, now you probably feel pretty good. Well, there's a point at which you change from feeling uncomfortable to comfortable. That, to me, is your important, what I call your factor. And what I mean by that is, let's say, your point at which you became comfortable was when you had $80,000 in cash to cover future 60 days payables of $40,000. Okay, then you have 80 over 40, which is 2 to 1. You've got a 2 factor. So that means that if you just have somebody every week run that factor analysis and they tell you one number, you can very quickly answer the question to yourself, am I comfortable or not? And if you're comfortable, keep going. So let's say that the 2 was your factor. Okay, great. So now at any point in time, your bookkeeper or whoever puts those numbers together, if they say, hey, by the way, your factor's 2, you're like, cool, great, I've got it. I know I'm in good shape because now I know I've got enough cash just to cover things. I don't have to worry about that side of things. But then if somebody came along and said, hey, guess what? Your factor is now 5. Now you're saying to yourself, ugh, you know what? That's a lot of cash I'm sitting on. Probably much more than I need to. Okay, great. Now you can start making some decisions. Well, then what you can start to do, if you've been tracking that, but then you go back and you've been tracking your ratios, you may determine, like my ratios, for example, last year, and this is something that's kind of interesting for me, my ratios last year were 35, 26, 39. So that meant 35% of my revenue went to salaries, 26% of my revenue went to operations, and 39% of my revenue went to profit. Okay. To me, that's a lot that goes to the profit. So I thought, okay, well, if I wanted to really build this business, then I need to get those ratios more in line, 40, 35, 25. So where do I need to put the money? Well, I need to put the money towards salaries and operations. And I need to put a lot more money toward the operations side. So what I'm doing now is I'm actually spending a lot more on marketing and really ramping that side up because I know if I can do that, all my other ratios, all my other things work. I know when I can get people in the door and they qualify, and they're sort of call it qualify or ideal or whatever, I know they're going to become a client. So I know that revenue is going to build. So if I can get more of those people in the door, great. I know I've got the systems in place. So if I have too many people coming through that I can't handle, great. And I've got the money to be able to hire somebody knowing that that revenue is going to come in because they're going to follow the same system for me. So you see how it all kind of works there? So, it's important to really follow those numbers and to really map that out. So here's the thing. Everything I'm talking about, I know it's possible because I've done it, okay? It is simple at the end of the day, and this is where I oftentimes feel I have what's called the curse of knowledge. When I talk to some people who are maybe new Academy members or new to podcast or the LinkedIn group or whatever, and I talk to them on the phone or whatever happens to be, I oftentimes forget some of the challenges because to me, I just live in this world where I've got the processes and routines. I'm just trying to make them better and better. But starting out from scratch, oh my gosh, I mean, it's a huge undertaking. So it's not something that happens overnight. It is simple, but it's very complex at the same time. But if you're able to move through the building a foundation stage, then through the securing the future stage, and then through to the scalability stage, you will have built yourself a much better, like an incredible business. So get out there and do just that, one step at a time. Get out there and build yourself a better business.
You've been listening to Scott E. Plaskett, a certified financial planner and industry veteran in the world of fee-based financial planning. Want free resources to help you build a better fee-based financial planning firm? Visit ilovefinancialplanning.com right now to register for Scott's Inner Circle email list, where you'll get front-of-the-line updates on the latest resources that are driving profits to Scott's fee-based financial planning practice. All of the resources are pulled directly from the highly acclaimed fee-based Financial Planning Mastery Academy. Go now to ilovefinancialplanning.com. Build a better business and make more money with your fee-based financial planning practice today.